All right.
902, brought to you by BunnySlippers.com. Check out their brand new Dino Sound Slippers. Every 3 steps, they make a noise. They're super green, super plushy, and super soft. And they've got a nice, grip slip on the bottom so you don't slip when you're getting stuff at 3 a.m. or, it's nice, fun, and they look like dinosaurs. So, hey, they look like dinosaur feet. So, yeah, check them out. BunnySlippers.com. Dino Sound Slippers.
PGTTCM, written and edited by Daniel Spitzer, audio by Sarah Fee and Daniel Spitzer, music by Kevin MacLeod. Help the show by sharing, liking, or 5-star giving wherever you listen to or rate podcasts. Support the show by hitting the Patreon button on pgttcm.podbean.com or by going to paypal.me/pgttcm. Buy a cool shirt from pgttcm.threadless.com. PGTTCM is part of the Dark Myths Collective. Learn more at darkmyths.org. And don't forget to visit pgttcm.com and check out our new podcast, Welcome to Portland, and find out how you can be a guest on it.
Recorded at Badger's Drift Studio in beautiful North Portland. Shoggoths and Flying Pull-Ups. This episode featuring Cody Goodfellow.
It was a terrible, indescribable thing, vaster than any subway train, a shapeless congeries of protoplasmic bubbles, faintly self-luminous, and with myriads of temporary eyes forming and unforming as pustules of green light all over the tunnel-filling front that it bore down upon us, crushing the frantic penguins and slithering over the glistening floor that it and its kind had swept so evenly free of all litter. H.P. Lovecraft at the Mountains of Madness. Abdul al-Hazred wrote of his fear of Shoggoths in the Necronomicon.
At the Mountains of Madness includes a detailed account of the circumstances of the Shoggoths' creation by the extraterrestrial Elder Things. Shoggoths were initially used to build the cities of their masters. Though able to understand the Elder Things' language, Shoggoths had no real consciousness and were controlled through hypnotic suggestion. They created the Shoggoths to be their all-purpose slave race.
Eventually, however, the Shoggoths rebelled, an event that hastened the decline and ultimate collapse of their civilization. Although the Elder Things managed to initially subdue the Shoggoths after their attempted rebellion, the Shoggoths continued to improve psychologically, increasing in intelligence and developing the capacity to live on land. Shoggoths that remained alive in the abandoned Elder Things city in Antarctica would later imitate their master's art and voices endlessly repeating, "Tikkalili, Tikkalili."
The Shoggoth's cry of Tikkalili is directly taken from the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, 1838, by Edgar Allan Poe, which was an influence on Lovecraft. In the tongue of the natives that live in Antarctica, Tikkalili, Tikkalili is used as an exclamation of woe and suffering. It is derived from the call of the white birds that flock around what is heavily implied to be a cosmic horror that resides in the South Pole. Flying Polyps.
The Flying Polyps were a horrible elder race of half polypus, utterly alien entities. They were only partly material and had the power of aerial motion. Despite the absence of wings, they exhibited a monstrous plasticity and temporary lapses of visibility. Singular whistling noises and colossal footprints made of 5 circular toe marks seemed also to be associated with them. H.P. Lovecraft, The Shadow Out of Time.
The polyps came to Earth from space as conquerors about 750 million years ago. They also inhabited 3 other planets in the solar system, including possibly Yakash, Neptune, and Tond, though Tond itself may lie outside the solar system, or it may be possibly referring to Pluto, which was discovered only 6 years before the publication of this story. On Earth they built basalt cities with high windowless towers. When they attempted to colonize the oceans, the polyps were driven back by the Elder Things. Thereafter, they restricted their habitats to the surface world. Their senses did not include sight, but what senses they had could penetrate all material obstructions. They were only partially matter, but still solid enough to affect and be stopped by normal materials. This additionally gave them resistance, if not outright invulnerability, to normal means of damage, though they could be destroyed by certain forms of electrical energy. Their minds were so strange that the great race of Yith could not perform psychic transfers with them.
They are able to levitate and fly, despite lacking any visible means of doing so, and leave telltale massive footprints when on the ground. Their amorphous bodies can turn invisible at will, though this ability appears somewhat negated by whistling noises associated with them in general. In battle, their ability to control and direct powerful winds is put to use as a weapon.
When the great race of Yith came to Earth, they warred with the Polyps and soon drove them underground, and their advanced technology. The great race then sealed their entryways to the Polyps' subterranean abode with trapdoors, which afterwards were diligently guarded. The Polyp cities were left abandoned, perhaps as a reminder of the horrors that dwelt below.
Eventually, the Polyps rose up and almost exterminated the great race, afterwards returning to their subterranean haunts. Having no concept of light, the Polyps seem content to remain there, annihilating the few intruders that chance upon them. Entrances to their dwellings, mostly deep within ancient ruins, where there are great wells sealed over with stone. Inside these wells still dwell the Polyps.
And that's it for Shoggoths and Polyps. Up next, we're going to have Cody Goodfellow talking about Shoggoths in depth, and also Weird Shadows over Innsmouth, edited by Stephen Jones and distributed by Finnegan and Bremer. So stay tuned for that. All right. Hey everyone, we are back with another book review. This time we are reviewing Weirder Shadows over Innsmouth, edited by Stephen Jones and published by Finnegan and Bremer. Weirder Shadows over Innsmouth. It's a collection of short stories about the Deep Ones and things related to the Deep Ones. There's some really great stuff in here. I was kind of skeptical about this one because it's the third in a trilogy of short stories, and I'm thinking, is it going to be any good? Is it, is it just like the dregs left of stories about Deep Ones and Dagon and Hydra? And no, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. This one has some really, really awesome stuff in it. It's got the port by H.P. Lovecraft. It's got some August Derleth that's not terrible, that I actually like Innsmouth Clay, and I'll fight you on that. It's got some really good stuff from writers you know, such as Ramsey Campbell and Brian Hodge, and let's see who else is in this. Brian Lumley, hey. But yeah, no, there's all kinds of great stories in here with titles such as Innsmouth Bane, Richard Riddle Boy Detective in The Case of the French Spy, Innsmouth Clay, The Archbishop's Well, You Don't Want to Know, Fish Bride, The Hagstone, On the Reef, The Song of the Sighs. That's S-I-G-H-S, not S-I-Z-E, because I'm not going to make that joke. The Same Deep Waters as You, The Winner. The Translation of Elizabeth Hastings, The Chain, Into the Water, Rising, Not Dreaming, The Long Last Night. And yeah, no, contributors' notes and all kinds of good stuff. And I really, really, really want to recommend Weirder Shadows over Innsmouth. If you've read The Shadow over Innsmouth, you know what to expect. If you have never read The Shadow over Innsmouth, check out these stories. First, read The Shadow over Innsmouth. I don't know why you're listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos if you haven't. Not that I wrote it or anything, but H.P. Lovecraft did, and Cthulhu, I don't have to explain myself. You have to explain yourself, because you haven't read Shadows over Innsmouth? What, are you one of these people who's proud of the fact that they've never seen Star Wars? I don't need your kind. Turn off your iPhone right now and go listen to Serial. Everyone else, Weirder Shadows over Innsmouth. It's super good. Fendogan and Bremer, you can get it on Amazon, and the limited trade paperback was going for $110. I don't know what they're going for now. Amazon and eBay will tell you, and they'll do a much better job, and they'll take your money. I'm not going to take your money. Well, I'll take your money because you can always donate to PGTTCM at paypal.me/PGTTCM and go to pgttcm.podbean.com and click the patron button and become a patron. Or donate, whatever you want to do. All right, so back to the show. We're going to talk to Cody Goodfellow about Shoggoths, and his answers may surprise you. Unless you've read any Cody Goodfellow, and then his answers won't surprise you at all. All right, back in a second.
Lordy. So, Shoggoths, yeah. Shoggoths are my favorite entity in the Cthulhu mythos.
And who are you?
I'm Cody Goodfellow.
Tell me a bit about yourself, Cody. Let's get a bit of a bio here. I haven't had a chance to talk to you about that yet.
Yeah, no, I'm an author. I've written 8 novels. I've got 4 collections of short stories out. I've written books with John Skipp and J. David Osborne. I've written some short film projects and comic projects, and done some acting. You might recognize my beard from videos by Beck or Anthrax.
Glow.
Yeah, I was on Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, You're the Worst, and Shameless, all wearing the same clothes.
Yeah?
Yeah, my character has an arc. My homeless guy character has a 30-year arc from Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling up through You're the Worst.
That's amazing.
And
He's a time traveler.
I know, right? Yeah, no, I'm just there. I'm like the crying Indian, man. I'm an icon of America's sadness.
Yeah.
I host a Cthulhu Prayer Breakfast at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival here in Portland, and biannually in Providence, and that's coming up because this is an odd year. My first 2 novels, Radiant Dawn and Ravenous Dusk, were very tightly woven around the Elder Things monomyth, and involved Shoggoths, and used them as that secret, that missing link in the cosmogenic theory of the origin of life on Earth, and used it as a key to where it's going. So yeah, I feel uniquely qualified to deliver the digressive mouth solos.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so tell me about Shoggoths. What's the deal with Shoggoths? What's the deal with Shoggoths?
Well, what I love about the Shoggoths is that they're kind of the glue that holds together what actually anchors the Cthulhu mythos to us. It's really the final horrible secret, right? That everything in the Cthulhu mythos seems to come from outside, or up from the depths, or out of the nooks and crannies of the evolutionary tree. And humans are still kind of there. We're sort of displaced from the center and reduced down in scale to an infinitesimal level. And it really puts things into perspective, but we're still separate from all of that.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't really touch us. And it's not really until, the ultimate horrible secret is to find out that you're one of them too. And to realize that we're all them it finally kind of leaves us rootless, and it leaves us with nothing to say as far as, well, that's wrong, or no, it's what was always going on. We've been, everything that we thought was normal has been a convenient lie. I really like that. When I was a kid, I used to really love giving people bad news. I was kicked out of a line to get a picture with Santa Claus when I was 5 for telling a kid that Santa Claus wasn't real and God wasn't real. So yeah, this felt like a wonderful candy-coated body of mythology for people who love giving other people bad news. And yet it's fascinating. It's exhilarating. It's what's neat about it is that it gives a mythic, folkloric metaphor for evolution.
Yeah.
You know, it helps. I mean, Shoggoths are essentially life, an archetypal embodiment of life itself, of the adaptive fecundity and fertility and the ability to adapt to things. If you were to look at, you know, the entirety of everything that's ever lived on Earth as one family or even as one organism, compacted in time and space, it would look like a Shoggoth.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I thought it was looking at the myth of how the Shoggoths overthrew the Elder Things and then or at least broke their backs and then were themselves exterminated. And then you know, you ask how would something like that have been wiped off the face of the earth, and really the answer is it wasn't. In my books, I posit that that the Elder Things, in tinkering with, because they still had servitor organisms after they got rid of the Shoggoths in their twilight years, but they weren't as effective. That would have been because they put vast limitations on their ability to transmutate. And I posit that they had these laboratories, these biospheres, wherein servitor organisms were created, and that these things lingered on long after they went extinct. And that, you know, what leaked out of there has been the source of punctuated equilibrium, the source of leaps forward in evolution, new organisms seemingly leaping forward whenever there's been a cataclysm to fill up all these empty niches in the ecosystem. And so, you know, they're us. We're just really, really, really retrograde Shoggoths.
Yeah.
You know, when he's raving about the proto-Shoggoths at the end of At the Mountains of Madness, you know, it's one of those evocative, rich word salad things that people have been mining for decades because they were wonderfully unrooted. You know, I think we're the proto-Shoggoths. And I'll fight any man who dares to disagree with me. You really shouldn't serve beer in here, man. It was, to me, it was the notion that life had that capacity, you know, to at the beginning. And when I was researching Radiant Dawn, I was reading a lot of things like the selfish gene and a lot of histories of evolution that really focused on that first couple billion years, the archaebacteria and stuff, where, you know, for a couple billion years the best Earth could come up with was still snot on a rock. Mm-hmm. And then there these enormous leaps forward happened once cells started ganging up on each other, or started collecting into organisms, which is it's really fascinating because you can look at each of us, and we each look at each of ourselves as individuals, but you can also look at each of us as the cells in the human, in the collective human organism, the collective human body. We just don't get along really well. And I looked at that noise in the adaptability of our system. Why we're such a shitty hive. Mm-hmm. You know, you ever read To Marry Medusa by Theodore Sturgeon? No. It's a wonderful book of the alien invader that comes to Earth and seeks out the most isolated person that it occupies as a human host, and as it embarks on its nefarious plan, it hits this resistance, and it's not like a cleft-chinned Air Force general and his scientist daughter girlfriend that drive the aliens off. Human beings have this inherent hardwired, kind of like an EBS system that kicks in when we face a real existential threat. And we are all a hive organism. We just have all of this, you know, we're just a bunch of fart jars walking around with our individual thoughts. But the moment there's a real threat, each of us becomes the cell in this organism that can rise up and collectively smash a real invader. And I thought about why aren't we like that? Or if we were like that, how would we not know it, and how would we discover it? And I thought about things like cancer. It's noise in the it's caused by miscommunication in the mitosis of cells, and it creates something that doesn't know what it is. And Radiant Dawn what I postulated was that there's a group that understands that cancer is kind of the it's a species-wide form of apoptosis. It's the species killing itself off because it can't realize what it was supposed to be. So they form these hospice communities, and they use these radiation treatments, these very unique kind of radiation treatments that unlock they're not admitting that they're actually going to cure cancer, but because they're not, quite the opposite. When you get irradiated, your cancer metastasizes throughout your body. It takes over and replaces you, and there's a new you there. It at least says it's you, and it knows it's you, and it's going to do a better job being you than you ever did. And so essentially, they're kind of meta shagas. Their evolution is yoked to a collective intelligence, so that they don't each differentiate. Otherwise, by lunchtime, everybody would be a species unto themselves. It's offered as something good. And the question is, where did this really good cure for cancer come from? And when I wrote it, we self-published it as an offset print, and by the end of Radiant Dawn, we thought about this a lot, whether to make it explicitly a Cthulhu Mythos book. There weren't a whole lot of them at the time, but most of the ones that were very, very eagerly did that, advertised that they were Cthulhu Mythos books. And we felt like, my friend Adam Barnes and I, who formed Perilous Press, not the royal we, it's about 2 beers down the line, but we thought that if we were to put, it's a Cthulhu Mythos novel or a Lovecraft novel or something like that, or as seen in Call of Cthulhu, that it would whistle to those people that were already a reliable audience for that, which was, of course, pretty sizable. But we thought that it would better. I mean, I was looking to write this book and get all of these influences and repay them, and get that off my chest, and then figure out what I would do next, whether or not I was going to be writing, because at that point my writing experiences hadn't been that positive. We thought that the best way to repay that debt to Lovecraft and Clark Ashton Smith and Robert E. Howard and those other pulp authors would be to suck other people into it. And so we packaged it kind of as a kind of creepy horror techno thriller, but didn't advertise that it was a Cthulhu Mythos thing, because we wanted to be another portal to pull people into that stuff. We wanted to make it as scary for them as it was when readers read it in the 1930s. And so we used kind of I used a lot of techno thriller and conspiracy theory and police procedural and military thriller kind of tropes to give you the sense that it was going to be kind of the kind of book where the heroes come together and overcome some sort of a horrible threat. Essentially a juiced up James Bond book. But of course, by the end of the first book, it turns out to be a very, very different kind of thing. And only then is it really laid out that it's a cosmic horror thing. We don't find out what the actual mythos behind it is until well into Ravenous Dusk, the second book.
Oh, wow.
And that's a big reason why the second book is 2.5 times the size of almost two times the size of the first one. Also the internet. I wrote the first one when I was working at a Barnes & Noble, and I was the bargain and calendar guy, so I made a ziggurat out of boxes of books in the stock room, and it was kind of a reading bunker, and so it secreted away all the books that I was reading for research out of the inventory. And it worked really well until my assistant manager leaned on it once, and it collapsed on me while I was in there reading. But she wrote the first favorable review of the book on Amazon back in like 2001 or 2002, so.
Nice.
Yeah. Still wanted to get me fired. Yeah, it's like a lot of people, I first came across the Cthulhu Mythos around the same time, and they used to give you what's happening to me, in early puberty. Like I found first read mentions of Lovecraft and like famous monsters in Filmland and Fangoria, but it was still kind of a cryptic thing. It was mentioned as if it didn't need explanation. And I got a copy of The Shadow of Innsmouth and others from Scholastic Books at a book fair. And shortly thereafter, Deities and Demigods came out with the Cthulhu Mythos monsters. And that pretty much got me exiled from all the D&D groups I was participating in because I couldn't stop putting them in there. It's like, no, you can't fight this. You're insane now. You're gonna have to fight each other. And then shortly thereafter, Call of Cthulhu came out, and yeah, ruined me for all other games except occasionally Gamma World. Also a real up game about Shoggoths and about elder things, and that whole mythology really resonated with me. You know, long after it stops being scary.
Yeah.
When the things that are frightening initially, it's fascinating to me when people are, do have a really strong, powerful fear reaction to something, and not just startlement, but it, where it keeps you up at night, because I miss that. I'm way past that. and so the things that when they stop being frightening, that we're still drawn to, that are really repellent, are is fascinating to me. The question of what we get out of it. Yeah, the question of cosmic horror and the mythos and sort of why these things appeal to us. I think again, it's because it's this wonderful pulp metaphor mythos body that explains existential dread, and but also that wonder.
Special thanks again to Cody Goodfellow for coming into the studio and talking to us about Shoggoths and the Cthulhu mythos and horror in general. And, thanks again, Cody. And if you are an author who wants to talk about a subject, get in contact with me. We can do something Skype. We can have you in the studio. All right, back to the show. Looking to advertise on a podcast? People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos is offering $100 a month for Black Clock Audio Tale advertising, which is a daily podcast that tells you a story one day at a time, or a short story, or something like that. And People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos, 3 months for $150. It's a podcast that comes out about once a month, but you know exactly who your audience is. Very direct marketing. People who listen to a podcast about the Cthulhu mythos. All right, back to the show. Thank you so much for joining us for People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Thank you again. So we talked about polyps today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about Shoggoths today, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a personal theory about how polyps float.
Oh, okay. Tell me about
it. And it's not a joke. It's not something gross.
Lay it on me.
Since they're not quite the same material as us, and anytime they talk about things that are squishy and immaterial, it always get the sense that they're talking about something that's extra dimensional. And I think the polyps probably float because of the fact that they don't quite exist in the same material as we do, and probably can swim through our ether.
Maybe that seems pretty clear. Also, maybe if they're extra dimensional, maybe they're going through another dimension where the gravity is a lot lighter at the same time. One of the things that I thought was pretty interesting to think about was that since they're sort of amorphous, maybe they can float like a balloon, like maybe they can like a balloon doesn't have any air in it, it just sits on the ground, right? But you put air into it and you can like very lightly push it up into the air. So maybe they can like bounce, and that's part of why they can leave these giant footprints behind, because they can expand their body hugely and then crash down to the ground and use a bounce to quote fly like the original Superman did.
Okay, all right. I personally think that they exist in space-time that we can't even...
Yeah.
And that's how they also control winds.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, they pull winds out of their time-space or something.
Maybe they're also, like, blowing the winds out of themselves. Like giant farts.
All right, that's getting edited. Yeah, polyps, what you gonna do? I mean, you can zap them. That's something you can do. You can zap them.
So they are affected by electrical energy, and that's it?
Yeah.
Are they, like, really... I mean, if you're wandering down into their realm, they're going to get you.
Yeah.
But, I mean, are they really a threat to human life other than that?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Because they want the surface again?
They want the surface again, and no one's unlocked them from their 5 million year. Oh, no, they're much longer than 5 million year
Oh, Jesus.
slumber. I mean,
So they probably don't even know we're here. We're like moving into their roof.
yeah. Yeah, no, the Great Race trapped them, and then some guy had some dreams about being a member of the Great Race and tracked him down and let him out. So, hey, in the world of Lovecraft, they're slowly being let out.
Well, I'll have to say...
Because of the shadow out of time. Because of the shadow out of time, they were let out. I think that was the right one, shadow out of time.
That's what it said on here.
Okay, yeah.
But I have to say, polyps are terrifying. Shoggoths, also terrifying.
Oh, yeah, no, I would be far more terrified of a Shoggoth than I ever would be of a flying polyp. I mean,
Yeah.
I would be terrified if I saw a flying polyp, but a Shoggoth, that's like,
I guess you'd have to sense the flying polyp.
I mean, they're all nightmare fuel, mind you, but
Right.
like, ooh, floating eyes, greenish light.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, the, like, temporary eye thing, that is, like, there's those... Okay, so can I bring up Fallout?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's those frogs that have, like, the bumps on their back that look like closed eyes.
Yeah.
And those ones are so gross looking. But those eyes, if they were like sinking back into the frog and then coming back up and then opening and then sinking back, bleh.
And Sarah is talking about the rad toads in Fallout 76. If anyone's like, what, huh? Yeah, no, those would be super.
Ugh,
Disgusting.
get the ick factor all over
Disgusting.
me already.
Yeah.
And I haven't even seen anything like that.
What I think is fascinating is it's a 15-foot sphere
Yes.
of bioconstruction.
Yeah.
And Shoggoths were made, and just life on Earth is the byproduct.
Yeah, that was something that I find interesting too. Like, I like that this origin myth incorporates the idea that we evolved from some matter. I mean, one of the things about the origin of life on Earth is that we're pretty sure, scientifically speaking, that the reason it evolved is because the tides created this sort of like constant mixing of some basic elements that then formed the basis of life, which is single-celled organisms.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then through cooperation, we formed bigger and bigger S's. So, like, that's pretty much the theory. But before we came up with that theory, which is pretty recent, actually, there was a lot of theories about the idea that life on Earth was formed from maybe, like, a catalyst that came from outside of our planet. You know, maybe
Yeah.
a planet that had life on it, for
Yeah,
instance.
like asteroid dust, and then some lightning, and then the primordial soup. And,
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And it's like that actually is not that radical of an idea in that there are plenty of single-celled organisms that we have found that can certainly survive the deprivations of space. You know, no oxygen, no heat, nothing. You know,
Oh, yeah.
be in quote unquote cold sleep.
Extremophiles.
Exactly, for a very long time. So that's a good theory.
And something else I wanted to talk about is, like, I've heard people in the past go, primordial soup, life came out of what, huh? I've got mud puddles in my backyard, and, you know, it's not growing anything. And this is when we also have to go and say, deep time.
Yeah, like it takes a long time.
We're talking, like,
Also-
time that we can't fathom.
Right.
Like, we're talking, like,
Side note.
billions of
Anybody who
years.
claims there's not something living in a mud puddle in their backyard does not know about anything, because there's just life is everywhere on this planet. But it's interesting to me that when H.P. Lovecraft sat down to write about this story and the human origins thing came up for him within it, that he was already thinking about evolution as something that was so totally just a part of his thinking. You know, he had that much of a scientific grounding that, of course, we came, like, the origin of life was from the leftovers. Sorry about that. The origin of life was from the leftovers of these Shoggoths, you know, but that the way we came from was from the
Aquatic apes. Sorry, I love throwing out science theories that are
Oh, man.
laughable.
Well, I mean,
Especially
yeah.
when we're talking about Lovecraft and his
Yes.
pop pseudoscience understanding of science, because Lovecraft
Yeah.
wasn't a scientist. He wasn't even like someone who could do he could do maths, but he wasn't,
Maths.
he
As
couldn't,
if he was British. Go ahead.
well,
Sorry.
he thought he was. He just felt that the new in New England was just a obstacle he had to overcome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, one of the things is that if you perpetuate ignorance, nobody's going to continue to know anything. Trying to think about new things is a good idea, but I feel like Lovecraft, in a lot of ways, just some of his stuff just perpetuates ignorance. Some of it is an interesting thought experiment, like
Yeah.
most people.
Yeah, no. As I've talked with some people recently, Cody Goodfellow, Ken Hite, talking, Rossi Lockhart, talking about like horror itself. Horror itself is a way to science fiction. Horror itself is a way to like answer philosophical questions that may not need to be answered. What would happen if God did notice you? What would happen if, just kind of like a lot of like, say, I don't know. Imagine if someone decided to start answering 11th, 12th, 13th century Christian philosophy.
I guess one of the things that's interesting to me about the sort of worldview that we get with these monsters, these greater monsters,
Yeah.
is that, okay, so for so much of human history, humans have placed themselves at the center of history.
Sure.
And the truth of the matter is of course that we are a dominant species in Earth. We're a keystone species in some way because we change all of the environments around us. We, radically changed environments. We have these complex social structures. We're very, we interact with our environment in a different way than a lot of other animals. But we're not any more or less of an animal than any other species on Earth. Like, we are as much of an animal as a bacteria. But the thing that I find really interesting is that all of H.P. Lovecraft's work does not place humans in the center.
No.
We're never like, oh man, those humans, we got to go do something about them. Or like a lot of times it's like, what are you guys doing here? Or like, I'm just doing my thing and you guys are in the way. What are you doing worshiping me now? That kind of stuff. And, it's like I like that idea is there because that is the way the universe sees us in a lot of ways. We're not about the universe. The universe is not about us.
Well, the universe is a vast, cold, and different place.
Well, frankly, we don't know what the universe is because we can only see this one pocket.
Well, I'll give you a hint. It's a cold, vast, uncaring place.
So, I mean, my point is that I think that it's interesting to have this sort of like cultural driver in the mythos
Sure.
that places humans in a much more actual reality of where we are.
Yeah.
Like we are just a part. And,
Well-
and also, we're responsible for our own actions.
They don't call it cosmic humor.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I wonder what that would look like.
Cosmic humor?
Put a red nose on Cthulhu.
I don't know. Christian novelty music? I'm curious if it's a genre, but I know it probably is.
Oh my gosh. Like, who's the Weird Al Yankovic of Christian novelty music?
I don't know. And what instrument do they play? Do they
'cause
play a
it's not
harp?
not the accordion, I'll tell you that much.
Remember, everyone, remember to keep it weird.
And stay squiggly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And also, remember to go to pgttcm.com and check out Welcome to Portland. Find out how you can be on our show and have snacks that I make at home, and all the beer that we brew in this studio, and all kinds of fun stuff. You can tell a story. If you've ever wanted to tell a spooky story, you can tell your spooky story. Hey, do you have a public domain story that you want to tell? Or do you have a story that you wrote that you want people to hear? Track down Black Clock Audio Tales, our daily audiobook podcast, and maybe your story could be on it. Just record something, send it in to pgttcm.com, track us down, find out how to do that, email us, and we'll get you set up.
Oh, fuck, I just lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
What was I talking about?
We were talking about perpetuating ignorance.
Oh, no.
That?
It was about...
Watergate.
Oh.